Hey guys, welcome back to the Tradition First podcast. My name is Katie Brooks, and I'm the founder and executive director of the Tradition First Foundation. And today we have Kathy Luzzi. Did I say that right?
You did. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Because I meant to ask you that before. I was like, okay, I'll wing it. All
No,
right.
you did perfectly.
All right. Awesome. And so today she's just going to be here and share her testimony and talk to us a little bit about apologetics and maybe get into why the youth is experiencing this countercultural spiritual warfare and which is causing them to leave the faith in rapid numbers. And so we want to kind of talk about this and address this and see what we can do for this generation moving forward so that they're growing stronger in Christ. And so, Kathy, can you give us a little bit of a bio, a little bit about who you are and kind of your story, and we'll kind of unpack that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on here, Kadea. And sorry if I say your name wrong.
It's
Please correct me. But so, yes, married 7 years to my husband. We have 3 boys together. So I got a little bonus son. He's 14. Well, he's not little, but he's 14. We have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. So pretty big ranges.
Yeah.
And yeah, I grew up here in Phoenix, Arizona. I was born and raised, and I'm first generation Vietnamese American in my family.
Okay.
And yes, and so my husband was born in New York. So he's been here for about 30 years, I think, something like that, almost 30
Mhm.
years. And yeah, so I grew in Phoenix as a Buddhist. My family was raised up, they came from Vietnam. So it's a very heavily Buddhist country
Right.
or religion, sorry. And it's just been passed down generations. My grandparents, I see the way they teach my parents. So it's like, it's just passed down. So naturally, I was passed down the religion and
Right.
grew up with it. And it was not easy is like I would be lying because to have 2 cultures and then 2 religions, not 2 religions, but, a religion that wasn't dominant growing up,
Right. Right.
it's very and lifestyle, it was very difficult to maneuver.
Right.
And, it wasn't I knew when I had kids, I was like, I wasn't going to raise them Buddhist. That was already 100% sure.
So what
Because
caused you to kinda have that, yeah, that apprehension about, "Yeah, I was raised this way, but maybe this isn't the right way."
it never felt right spiritually with me. Maybe people might call that instincts or intuition, but, like, when I would pray and just do the rituals, it just didn't feel right. I didn't feel like I was, like, what Jesus offers, like, that loving, just peace. Peace is probably the word I would look for. I had no peace. Never I grew up very depressed. I was very isolated in a way. We had, 3 I have 3 I'm sorry. I'm one of 3 kids, so there was 5 of us in a home, and each of us felt like I would say, and I think they would agree, we all feel like roommates.
Mhm.
It was always like my mom's had her thing, my sister had her thing, my brother, nobody it didn't function as like a unit, a family. And
Right.
it was so you're there, but you're there like everyone's kind of fending their own emotions, feelings. It wasn't something you talk about. If you have a bad day, you don't talk about it. You suck it up and move on. It's kind of the culture, right? So a lot of us grow up very closed off, very harsh, like very seems like we're very emotionless, I would say.
Yeah. It's so interesting with, like, some of the Asian cultures because, like, I'm here in South Korea, and it's interesting to see, like, so when we take our kids to the park, other 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds here, they don't play the same.
Yeah.
Have phones already. And they're kinda like, I don't know, like, my kids are screaming, and they're loud, and they're playing, and they're being roughhousing, and then the other kids kinda look at them here, and, like, they're very polite, they're very independent. You see the kids 5 or 6 years old walking home from, like, wherever their elementary school is to
Yeah.
their apartment here by themselves,
Yeah.
and that's, here, South Korea, Japan, things like that, and it's a very independence culture, I guess it's like an idea of, like, you kinda get it's independence, treated as an adult, treated as a, individual,
Mhm.
but it seems like more of that the social skills, the social emotional skills and things like that are very different for Asian cultures.
Yes, it's like you said, like, the in like you're expected to figure it out on your own kind of thing.
Mhm.
Like, you should know how to handle that. And I just remember too, always growing up, my parents were like, "Don't trust anybody. Don't trust anybody. Don't trust anybody." And, that gives you, like, a fear, or, like, you're always like, okay, you meet somebody, a friend who is a genuine, pure person, and you could be like, "Nope, I can't trust her. I'm gonna push her away or hit away."
Mhm.
Future husband or whatever, and then you start to get closed off. And that's what happened was, like, I wasn't allowed to be social, so I wasn't allowed to hang out with friends, especially if boys were around, and sleepovers were a big thing, not that's not a big thing in our family, and not that, like, you should let your kids sleep over, but it was, like, social life was very isolating. I
Right.
didn't have I don't have friends, you know, I didn't have a good group, I kinda bounced around, and then I end up just talking to the same person all the time. Then I had best friends, but it was definitely hard for me to make friends.
Yeah. Do you think that that was more indicative of what was their situation being able like, coming to America and, that journey from Vietnam? Do you think that's kind of indicative of their experience with coming over here and maybe the hardship that they experienced?
Yeah, it could, like, they had to fend for themselves at a very young age too. So I get my parents being like, you should also always, fend for
Mm.
yourself and be wary, and we should all definitely be like that. But I think once they reached that point of, like, they finally made it. It
Mhm.
was like, "Okay, now we need to protect this, and now we
Yeah.
can't let anybody else in, because now they're just after you for something, whether it's our money, our a house, advantage, whatever it is."
Right.
They even to this day, actually, now that I think about it, my parents still get skeptical when if I don't lock the door. Like, if I don't lock the door behind me, like, "Did you lock the door?" I'm like, "Oh my god, yeah. Like, is there a mafia coming after you?" It's so wild that they are just so skeptical of a lot of just the outside.
Yeah. I
Understandable.
being over here immersed in Asian culture, I completely get it.
Yeah, you really don't get it until you're, like, in it, when back
Yeah.
people those things are like,
Yeah.
"You
Yeah.
couldn't do that?" Couldn't
Yeah.
movies that and that was another thing because there was a culture difference. I never watched trendy movies, trendy music, I barely knew Britney Spears, all her hit songs. People would think I was crazy. Like, "What do you mean you don't know the whole lyrics?" I'm like, I don't listen to this stuff." So I was very
Yeah.
different, very
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So when it comes to, like I said before we, started the podcast, our nonprofit is kind of centered around a study that was done by the Barna Group that
Mhm.
was able to conclude that nearly 70% of Christian high schoolers who enter college will leave with little to no faith. We spoke a little bit before about kind of your college experience and seeing that. And especially now knowing your background, I can imagine like college was a process for you. But
College was college for me, that's for sure. Whatever you can think about college is probably what I experienced, because it was that time of freedom for us, a lot of us, right?
Right.
Who
And
leave.
I think kinda what this statistic ended up concluding has to do with just the ecosphere of college or just the aspect of when you go to college or when you're that age, you're kinda searching. You're kinda in a searching mode of who you are and your purpose and who you're meant to be and things like that, or is it so much so is it academia or is it so much so that there's a s that do you think is there the searching and then they just don't get the answers and it just leads them kind of whichever way that they end up flowing.
I guess it would, because I didn't, grow up in a Christian home. I wouldn't, I guess it would depend on, like, how that Christian home was, of course, but me getting to college was more, I didn't stay on the campus. So I think that was my
Mhm.
saving grace, to be honest,
Yeah.
because I definitely would have probably flunked every single one of my classes, because
Mm,
I did unfortunately end up going that party girl route,
Mhm.
drinking as every opportunity, partying. But because I didn't stay on campus, I did have friends who lived on campus, so I would drive to the and I was young, 18, 19, no boyfriend, nothing to hold me back. So I could of course shouldn't be drinking, but um, you know, things happen. And so I could see, yes, like the influence of other cultures because there is a lot of culture. I know when I was in school, I did meet a lot of cultures that were outside of America, Asia, India,
Mhm. Yeah.
all of those. And so, especially when you start, meeting one and maybe dating one, especially a
Mhm.
Christian, I even to this day, I know Christian women who have married into a different culture. You slowly start to reform, right? You slowly start to
Yeah.
take on the the more dominant whoever's more, I guess, dominantly involved in their religion, right?
Right.
And so if it's usually the male, and I could see that, and because there's a lot of that, like if half your class is from a different country, culture, I'm sure it goes both ways, academically and culturally. Like you're
Yeah.
both gonna, like, especially like if half the class is from a specific country and they're just like acing every test because of their discipline. Like my
Mhm.
discipline with academics was very good. I wanted to get straight A's. I wanted to get on what is it, the cum laude, those
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
was like that. And like I knew how to say no when I needed to say no.
Mhm.
And that's a culture thing for me because I was disciplined and I was honestly scared that if I didn't pass with a diploma, my parents would throw me out in the streets or something, and like that's not saying that's healthy, but that was like the fear I had too of like pleasing my parents because
Yeah.
they do come from that very strict household, traditional household. So you get that influence. Well, how do you study? How do you do that? I want to be like that. And they see success in that. So I could see someone who maybe came from a Christian home who isn't as disciplined or they didn't instill that kind of fear on their child. They would be more influenced, if
Right.
maybe their faith with the Christianity wasn't as strong.
Yeah, right. Just the ecosphere alone is tempting to get dabble in a little bit of this, dabble in a little bit of that. Meet this person, meet that person. Absolutely, the military is exactly the same. I
Yeah,
would say that
exactly.
very similar for like people who are Christian who join the military. You know, you have people from all over the world really because there are people who come from different countries who join our military. It's a normal pathway to citizenship for a lot of people from other countries who want to come to America, and so you're around different cultures and you're around different people and things like that. And I say the military is a different element because you're supposed to see this person as a brother's or a sister, someone to protect,
Mhm.
someone to you have their back, and you kind of most of us didn't even know any cultural things. It was just like, "Hey, we just hang out. I don't know anything about you, but I know we're cool. We hang out." And that's kind of what the military ethos creates. And then, obviously the layer on top of that is when you go and you deploy and you see things. You see children's schools being blown up, or you see women and children being, discarded, or things like that in different cultures that you see when you deploy. And so there's things that you see in the military where people come to a point where they start questioning their faith, because especially when you're really up close and personal with evil, with radical ideologies and things like that, it makes you question your faith. And so kind of share your testimony of how you went from Buddhist to full on Christian. I follow your Instagram, so you also share a lot of fitness stuff and things like
Yeah.
that, and tie that into your Christian life right now. So what was that transition like for you, especially since you didn't have a Christian upbringing?
Yeah. So, we got married and fast forward, let's see. So I was baptized and saved last year. Yeah. It's been a little over a year now. And so I was in my early 30s and we already had my last babe. So I was done having kids. And I knew I got to a point where I was like, okay, I need to figure out what faith I want to put my children in because they're getting older, right?
Mhm.
We do believe in putting them in a faith background somewhere. It's just to have some, root. And actually, we went to a Christian church before COVID because my first son, the 6-year-old, was going through a birthing, I don't know, I don't really wanna call it defect, but it is, I guess. He was born half deaf. And so he had a lot of health issues the first year. So it was a lot of just obviously uncertainty and just we were very fearful of what would happen. He'd end up in the hospital twice for lung issues, and it got my husband really trying to pull it got him going on wanting to go back to church. And he was the first one actually that initiated. He was actually baptized Catholic. So
Okay.
going to a Christian church was actually very surprising to me because neither of us had any Christian background. But the church that we picked, it's a very big church in our community, so we just naturally gravitated towards it.
Mhm.
And then COVID happened, and of course we stopped for about 4 years. And then 2023, I decided to go back on my own because I was going through sure, postpartum had a lot to do with it, and I was really unsure of my identity. I was trying to figure out how to make a living and be home as a mom. And
Mhm.
because I refused to do the 9 to 5 thing. I just refused to do it. I was not gonna go to back to work. I did hair for a living. I still do it. But I was working for a salon, and I was afraid to, like, go on my own. But I knew if I went on my own, that's where I'd have that flexibility. But everyone
Mhm.
knows as a hairdresser, you're kind of limited on what can make, right?
Right.
And I didn't wanna trade my time for money. I was like, "I need something that's gonna make me money where I can just stay home." And I kind of found this online marketing business, and I kind of fell into the trap of, like, copying others on how to do it. I
Mhm.
tried to do this business affiliate marketing, and I did it totally wrong. And I'm not saying you can't succeed in it in the right way, but I did it totally wrong. Didn't know what I was doing, and I could just feel myself, like, hating it every single day. And I just, like I was, like, unhappy. My husband was unhappy. We were just miserable in my home. Our home was very small. We had outgrown it. And I was like, "You know what? I don't know what else to do. I'm miserable. I'm depressed. My marriage is falling apart. My children, I didn't want my relationship with my children to get worse because I was very impatient, very antsy. I know most moms can relate to that at some point. And so I just was like, this isn't healthy for me. My mental health wasn't right. And so I went to church and I just started going every week. And then my husband started joining me, so that was nice. And about 6 months in, I'd say, I was Easter, actually, I just heard God, and he was like, "This is it. He had been telling me to get baptized for a while, and I had just thought it was my own thing. I don't know. No, I'm being too fast forward. I don't even know if I like this church. I gotta keep going and see."
Mhm.
Nope, that was it. The Easter weekend, the week after, I made the appointment to get baptized, and ever since then I have been walking, like, faithfully. I've been trying to, of course, the first few months were a little rocky and just trying to understand everything, but
Mhm.
me and my husband met at the gym, so the gym is a very big part of our lives, and I always try we both use the gym as, like, our little mental break, and just to kind of, like, bring us up, sorry, from the other mental darkness
Right.
that we were going through. And yeah, I started reading the Bible immediately because I had no idea about Christianity. I thought I was behind. So as like a
Mhm.
30-something-year-old Christian, like if I was going to join a Bible study group or something, I wanted to know everything or at
Yeah.
least majority of it because I had no idea who Jesus was. I had no idea. I had heard of him, of course, but I never knew the story.
Mhm.
So I did it the totally, probably not the best way. I read from Genesis first. And then I went all the way to the New Testament. It took me to 2 Testament in 6 months, I think. I got to the New Testament, and then that's when everything clicked. So that's why I was like, "Maybe I should have started in the New Testament." So this is
We should start there. Start at the
yeah, this
Gospels,
is a
Matthew,
heads
Mark, Luke,
up.
and John.
Any new believers here or thinking about it, please start in the book of John. Yes, she's right. But again, I had no guidance. I'm very stubborn too, and of course, just because I found Jesus doesn't mean I was gonna change that right away, right? So I did my own stubborn way of just, "I'm gonna figure it out on my own. I got this. I'm gonna read it. Open it, like, you read the first page," and no,
Yeah.
probably I
I'm
wouldn't
I'm
recommend it.
just doing this. I'm just gonna start here in the beginning. We're just gonna
Yes.
keep going.
Oh my gosh, it was rough. Yeah, I'm definitely going back now to some of those Testaments and like, okay, I need to like really understand this.
Right, now you have to study it. You've read it, but now you have to study it.
Absolutely, yes. And that's where, I'm at. I've read the New Testament multiple times and I just keep finding these little nuggets and revelations. And yeah, I think it was the book of Matthew. The book of Matthew made it very, my spirit was very stirred up because of that eagerness, like that time is running out kind of like, not like Jesus is gonna come tomorrow and we're all gonna die. It's like, you don't know when your last moment here is,
Mhm.
so we need to be right. We need to be with Jesus, right? Because he is the way, the life, the truth. So for me, I was like, "Oh my goodness, like I'm not living like the word of God or Christ like. I'm not living, I'm living in sin. I haven't repented. I'm
Right.
I was just me trying to catch up to everything. So that was like my big revelation was, okay, you need to like get serious. It's all in, right? You're not half foot in,
Mhm.
half foot out with Jesus. You can't be.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
and I told myself, why would I not want to be all in if I gave my life to Jesus? It wouldn't if I wanted to go back to my old ways, I know where I'd end up. Back
Mhm.
miserable, depressed, probably divorced, to be honest,
Right.
as sad as that is. And that's
And I was gonna ask how you said your husband started joining you to church after you had been
Mhm.
going. How has, you know, him diving into Christianity in the way that you are kinda changed him, obviously changed your marriage, changed the perspective, the trajectory, how you handle each other, how you deal with each other, because Christ outlines all that. Christ presents the perfect
Absolutely.
model of what marriage is. And so, like, how has that changed, especially coming from a Catholic background, which, a lot of people like to say, "Oh, Catholics are Christians," but Catholic there's very different between Protestant Christians and Catholics.
Oh, yeah, there's a very big difference in what they teach too. So it was very well, I mean, to be honest, like he still goes to church and we still, we definitely teach our children Christian like the Christian way. And I have my son reading the Bible and a kid's version. So we're definitely practicing that, but he is not fully there yet. Like he didn't get baptized yet. But he
Mhm.
does, support this. Like, he's definitely leaning towards this religion or faith. He
Yeah.
definitely we talk about Jesus and God. He doesn't read the Bible, though. So he is, it's more on his timing. I think everything happened kind of probably too fast for him. Like, where
Mhm.
like 6 months to go to church and then getting baptized is kind of would probably a lot of people would probably be like, "That's pretty quick," because some people go to church for years and don't get baptized.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so for him, I think he's it's definitely helped though. Now we have one faith, one like if I read something in the Bible and like this is how God wants it, we
Right.
refer to that instead of what the world would say or
It's alignment. I can say now you're
alignment.
aligned.
Yep.
And that's
Alignment for sure.
that's what Jesus gives. And I love that. And so it's interesting when it comes to, especially from you, you have a more, like you said, more studious academic background. You know how to turn it on, turn it off. I mean, I'm not going to say that that's exclusively Asian, but it's just a part of your culture, a part of your culture where it's just expected that you guys are just that. I don't want to say, I don't want to say you guys are just expected to be smart, but there's a high emphasis on culture here. I know here in South Korea, there's a giant test that every child. I don't know if it's every child or just the high schoolers or whatever. But it's a giant test, and the whole country shuts down for a day or two in
Oh
observance
wow.
this big test that is done. And I was like, that is so Asian. That is so Korean.
Yes. It's
It's
like
like
it's
a
like the
holiday.
knowledge is more the most important thing. Like knowing everything, I guess, is like
Yes, it's like a holiday, and it's like it's everything's shut down, and just 'cause, the kids are doing this test, and but
Mhm.
but usually the test dictates, where the children are going to college, and things like that. There's a high emphasis on getting their children into American colleges, and so, they take it very, very seriously.
Yeah.
One thing with apologetics is a lot of the people that are approached with apologetic conversations when it comes to their faith have issues reconciling logic and faith. How do you use logic and reason to justify a faith that is supposed to just be an emotional appeal? But obviously, our faith, God doesn't expect us to have blind faith. there is logic and reason that can be employed with the use of our faith. So, do you think that logic and reason contradict true faith in Christ?
No, I mean, I think obviously when you know the word of God, you can like reason, right? You can think logically of like, well, is this right or wrong? And to me, like before I found Christ, I feel like, yes, logic. I always reason with logic and everything because I would ask myself, is this good? Like, is this hurting somebody? Am I hurting somebody? Or are they saying doing something that's hurting? That's how I would reason it for me. And then when
Mhm.
when you have faith, obviously there are things where you just don't have an answer to. You don't know. And you just take that leap of
Right.
faith based on good intentions and good out, right? But so and then when that, whenever that blessing, whatever that happens, you're like, okay, I did all the right steps. I did this and that makes sense. So it's like for me, for I guess to answer like logic and faith, yes. If it's I don't know, it's a very like that's a very deep, like very deep. It's one of those things that's hard to explain, Like
Mhm.
I just feel like if it's good logically, if it makes sense logically, like if getting married to the right man, right? Like whether you're a believer or not, you have to ask yourself, is he respectful? Does he speak kindly? Does he respect me? Like he doesn't flirt with other women. He's only focused on me. Is he are we on the same page morally and even if you don't have the same religion, but are you morally on the same page, You don't believe in staying out till 9 in the morning while your other spouse is sleeping or, at home. Like you have to have these like respect and love like Jesus has for his, you know, church, right? And protection, is he safe? Do you feel comfortable? And so that's an example I would think
Mhm.
but that goes with faith, right? Because you used your logic. Okay, he's a good man. He's never cheated on me. He's never given me a reason to cheat. He's smart. He wants to go do he's ambitious or whatever. You're like, "Okay, I think this is a very good person to marry," And then you have to take that faith to move forward.
Right.
Because
And it's
you could still say all that and be like, "Yeah, no, there's gotta be something better," right? And not take the leap
Mhm.
of faith and then miss out,
Yeah,
or maybe you could have been,
right.
saving
I
yourself
think
from a headache.
I think it's one of those things where God obviously he puts a limit on our human capacity, right? He allows
Absolutely.
us to use our reason, use our logic, but at some point in time, that runs out. And
Yes.
there's an aspect of trust that is necessary, but I do it's very important because obviously he tells us to be, discerning of people, being able to identify false witnesses, false prophets, things like that. Level of cognitive and critical thinking that is essential to the Christian faith, that employs being on guard, being alert, being sober-minded about things going on in the world. First Peter 3:15 talks about that we should be ready at any moment to, provide a defense to why we believe in the things that we believe in Christian-wise. And that's
Mhm.
kind of the root apologetic verse that is, used in apologetics because the culture has lots of things to say about Christianity. What about evolution? What about, science? What about, how the Bible is real? All these things like that when it comes to the historicity, the true deity of Christ, all types of things like that. And so there is a lot of logic and reason that has to be used. It's like apologetics is more so that tool. It's like that secondary tool of evangelism, right? When you evangelize to people, you're going and you're sharing your testimony and you're witnessing to them,
Mhm.
but not all people's issues with Christianity or stumbling blocks, should I say, are from an emotional place. I can share my testimony about how, someone was, on drugs and, they came to Christ. They had a revelation, came to Christ and things like that. Not everyone will feel the same. Some people will say, "Oh, that person got lucky." People come out of it all the time. Some people just snap into it. Whatever they snap out of it. Some people's issues with accepting Jesus is more intellectual. I can't reconcile the fact of the issue of science with Jesus. I kind of have more faith in science because at least science is observable. It's something that I can see. I can't
That
see Jesus. I can't
that's where
see
my
God.
husband's at right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's a lot.
and it becomes, a stumbling block. It becomes a barrier to being fully open to the gospel. And so this is why it's so important. And again, the youth is leaving the church at rapid pace. And it's like, there are adults who have issues with these questions, like you say, your husband. So can you imagine, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, and then they go to college and then it's a completely different ecosphere. So we kind of see why, we have to train our children up in a way that we
Oh,
treat
yeah.
them as disciples. We treat them as
Mhm.
little disciples who are currently unsaved. And that's the thing too. We don't think about our children are currently unsaved in our home. You may grow up in a Christian household, but until they make that self profession and repent to Jesus, they are saved. And so how we model Christ likeness and how we, educate them about the word is very important for their walk with God. But it's easy to see how youth is so easy to turn away in our culture and our climate because they do have the answers for what they feel about, science or anything that's antithetical to God. Whereas we have to make sure on our end, on the Christian end, that we're also providing answers. It can't just be have faith. Just have
Oh,
faith in
yeah. I 100% believe in modeling that Christ life
Mhm.
to that your kids see because you can talk about the word all day, but if you're not living it,
Right.
you're not gonna convince anybody, about the
Exactly.
Bible. That's why we are called witnesses, right? Because we were saved and we follow him. We
Right.
follow Jesus.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know with a lot of the youth that we work with and even the kids in our Sunday school class, the biggest driver of what leads kids to leave is the of its hypocrisy. And it
Mm.
is because it's like, as parents, we're not gonna have everything figured out, right? We're not gonna have everything figured out. We're not gonna do things the right way. We still may be in the process of sanctification where God is dealing with our anger or he's dealing with our impatience or he's dealing with our, inability to reason well with our child. And that's that process of purification that we have to go through as Christians as we're going through this walk. But that's the main things that children cite is that they were told a certain standard, but no one around them had that standard. And children are horrible listeners, but good imitators.
Amen. They're sponges, I
So,
call them. They're little
yes,
sponges.
sponges, absolutely. And so it's so important, and I think this is what's missing with a lot of children is that it's not that there's an expectation that everyone around me will be perfectly Christ-like. I think it comes down to those people around them, the adults that are leading them, to have that accountability and also teach them grace. Teach them what grace is by allowing them to by being vulnerable with your children and saying, "Mommy messed up when I did X, Y, and Z. I'm sorry that I did, I yelled when I wasn't supposed to. I was with such and such, do you forgive me?" And you're also allowing them to learn how to extend grace, how to say, "I forgive you." And that's also a part of the Christ-like journey. But I get that
Absolutely.
it's different in different, like you said, different cultures where it's like your family didn't have a, emotional, "I'm sorry, come let's
No,
hug
no.
out."
Mm. I don't think I've ever heard my parents say I'm sorry to any of us.
So
I don't even know to each other.
right. And so so it's like that idea of grace, the idea of like of
Mhm.
extending that to someone else and being accountable, because we obviously know our parents do wrong, but it's kind of that pride, a little bit of pride in our parents' heart that goes, "Well, I shouldn't have to apologize for it, whatever. That's just what
Yeah,
I did."
I'm the mom and,
Yeah.
yeah, they're just my
Yeah.
children. Yeah, so that kind of power, like authority over us or something.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that is the medium in which God can intervene while we're going on our walk with Christ, and we aren't perfect, but our kids are watching. is they're watching us, but also allowing them to be able to model grace towards us. And they're able to do that when we can be accountable, when we can apologize, and when we can say, "Hey, mommy's on this walk, and then you're going to be on this walk too, and you're going to have your things that you go to God for, that you need help with, and that you'll need purification for, and all types of stuff like that." And so, that's why, God has the answer. He has the answer for our marriage. He has the answer for our parenting. He has the answer for all of our things in life. We don't have to go, I give this part to God, but this part right here is mine, and I'm still trying to figure it out. He can have it all. It's his grace, his power, his word is sufficient to handle all of it.
Absolutely.
What advice can you give to young adults and high schoolers who are struggling in their faith and they have more of an issue from an intellectual standpoint?
The best advice, especially because I felt like I was just a new baby believer, and I struggled with everything. But the thing that always saved me was just, like you said, surround yourself with faithful Christians and his word. I can't preach it enough, is getting in his word is the only way. But I know also how hard it is to just open the Bible, right? I mean,
Mhm.
so, definitely pray that God reveals, how opens your eyes and ears to the gospel, to the word, and, ask for godly friends, ask for godly inspiration. I have completely transformed my whole circle. I don't follow any secular, anything that could tempt me to get back in my old ways on social media. Friendships, I'm okay with the falling out or we haven't talked because, you realize they didn't provide, they didn't, bring anything to me, right? Anything
Right.
good at least. I'm not saying go cut all your friends off, but
Yeah.
definitely, so you have to it's a lifestyle, so you have to, like, surround yourself with it, with everything godly, Jesus, Christian, because and, like, that's how we said earlier with the families, right? Like, us modeling, if we model of the world and then half the week we're Christian, it's confusing. It's, with our children, so it's the same way as an adult, if you're gonna get worldly content, but you have your verses, your devotional on half the week, you're gonna be conflicted.
Right.
So, definitely, yeah, definitely pray for it and then slowly get in the Bible or be radical like me, jump in, jump in. Don't jump in the Old Testament, jump in the New Testament, but go all
Gospel's
in,
first.
Yeah,
Gospel's first.
Gospel's first, especially if you've never read the Bible. And I don't read. Like, this is the a lot I just saw a friend and she was really shocked by my radical change. And she's like, "What? Like, we would never expect it was you." I hated reading. I hate reading with a passion. I haven't picked up a book since I left college, okay? I read like an hour a day of the Bible. Like, and the Bible is not easy to understand. So, like,
Yeah.
as someone who despised reading before, like, I hope that's alone itself just shows, like, a testimony how interesting, how beautiful it really is. Like, how you find those little revelations and you find, like, those I call 'em nuggets and, that God is speaking to you, and that truly is how God speaks to you, When you get in his word and you know his word, you hear him all the time, or at least more often, and so that's the biggest advice is surround yourself with
Yeah.
godly things, godly people. It's hard.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
hard.
Especially the younger you are, because a lot of your identity ends up being very, you know, how do my peers see me? How do they, view me? I'm
Mhm.
good. My peers think that I'm good. I'm bad at, the things that my peers think are bad, is bad, then I'm bad. And so it's really hard and making sure that they have their identity in Christ. And that's so true. And so before we close, I want to talk a little bit about, your small ministry and your part of the world and what you try to do it's a ministry. Don't look like
I
that.
so I've had so many people say that. I'm like, "I'm not. It's not a ministry, guys. It's not. I'm just
It is.
passionate."
It is. Even if it was just in your home to your 4 kids, it's a ministry.
Yes.
Uh, And so what kind of inspired you to kinda is you and you're also in the fitness space, which is can be very, not godly with the
Yes. Oh, yeah. It can
clothes
be
the
very.
clothing, certain aspects of immodesty, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
So what caused you to, tell us about that before we close out so that people can go and I'll put your handle and everything and, when I put up this video and things like that, but I want, people to kinda know your heart behind why you started to do what you do on Instagram.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I came out of I mean, you'll see it all over my page. I call it deception. I straight up
Mhm.
came out of deception, and I was lied to, I feel, because not by my family, because they are also deceived, unfortunately, by the enemy. The enemy has put this type of religion in my family's head that they put on me. So I feel it in my soul that I feel like so many people in the Buddhists who are maybe born in America now, they were raised from a Buddhist family. I feel like they have pain and there's
Mhm.
trauma that they need to talk about, and they're too scared because or worried or again prideful, right? It's not something we don't talk about emotions. So you'll never see I mean not never, but it's rare to see a Buddhist, right, come out and say, "No, I was, depressed, this." And
Mhm.
I just felt that, like, I feel like I need to share my experience, and I need others to be okay to know that it's okay. Like, to come out of that is a big it's a huge revelation, you're gonna reveal the truth. So, I guess that's what I've always seeked my whole life was the truth. So, me sharing the truth is very important, and I always try to back it up with scripture. I always make sure that I'm living it as well, and me posting is just to kind of call out all the false like you said earlier, discerning the false teachings, the false prophets. Like, there a lot of people don't have that wisdom or discernment to see, like, how they're being deceived, and so I kind of, like, try to explain that in scripturally and with my experience of feeling like I was deceived from the enemy. And
Yeah.
and then with fitness, like, because I we love it so much as part of us, I yes, again, the deception where we feel we need to show off our bodies, we need to expose, like, I couldn't even believe when I was just looking up, what I think I was looking up fitness content that was comical. I wanna look up funny fitness content. I saw more half-naked girls than I was expecting, and it's sad. It's honestly sad that we have come like, I mean, I was there at one point where I felt I never did that, like, posted half naked, but I I did a competition once, and I could see the pride of just, you look good, you look amazing, and people are gawking at you, and they're complimenting you, and it gets you nowhere. That's the one I hope when I preach that, the one thing they get out of it, it's not worth any of it.
Yeah.
I could care less if the most beautiful man came up to me. Well, I mean, I'm married now, but if I was single, I remember being single, I would care less because he if he's not like a God-given man or if he's not ordained by God and he's of the world, it's gonna crash
Right.
100% because, there's the things that he's gonna be involved. But it's a very vain industry that brings no peace, no peace. You're
Yeah.
always you're always trying to reach perfection, and that's why I feel so passionate about preaching it is that you can be fit, you can have an amazing healthy body, and you can look physically amazing without having to re- receive validation from the
Mhm.
world, from others. I use God as my motivation. Like, look what I can do with your body, God. I have a six pack after 2 months. I mean, I don't, but I'm just saying one day,
Yeah.
I have a six pack with after two kids because of you, God, because you have allowed me and given me the strength to do that, right? And
Right.
like that's where we have to change our mindset, renew our mindset of stop thinking of what the world says, and glorify for God. Like my body is for God, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's why I do mix a little bit of fitness in there because it is something I am passionate about and coming out of a very, very dark religion.
Mhm.
I hate to say it, Buddhism is a very dark religion. There was no no good or peace that comes out of it. I just saw my parents the other day, and I'm just their house is like just it's just them 2 now, and it's my brother, and so there's not a lot of people, and I just see the chaos. Even though they're not fighting or there was no one there, but I could just feel and see it. And there's
Yeah.
chaos in this house. And that's not how I want my family to be. I don't want any of that chaos in my house. I want
Yeah.
peace and love and, everything that Jesus is. And so I hope that with my little small ministry, that I have been it's funny you say that. I have been praying and trying to get closer with God, and I do feel that there's something shifting with that with my platform. So I don't know what he's gonna do next with it, but I'm excited because I do feel like maybe I'm gonna share something more or a little differently. So because
Yeah.
I am starting on YouTube, I feel like I should be on YouTube, but I think God's
Yeah.
just saying, "Hold on, just let me work on you for a bit, and then
It's
we'll get it."
fine tune
Yes,
everything on Instagram, and then when we get to YouTube, you'll be ready for a full-blown situation, and
absolutely, yes. I maybe that
it's
yes, exactly, like,
yes.
I'll give you a little baby step on Instagram, and then we'll throw you in the big dog one day with YouTube.
Yeah, but it's so true about, and it's already difficult, I feel in certain women's spaces, and it's even more in the women fitness spaces, but like you said, the vanity, the idolization, the competition amongst other women, because now it's how does my body or how do I look in comparison to someone else, and if there's a perception that someone else is better in any type of way, it just breeds, contempt and divisiveness in competition, and it's so hard, and it's so hard because it's social. I have a love-hate relationship with social media because of this, because it's like, I know we need to be out there speaking truth because there's all this craziness and the debaucherousness, right? I know we need to be out, but it's just so hard because, it everything social media, idolizes and focuses on is, little hits of dopamine, little hits of
Oh,
likes and
yeah.
oh, you're great, you're this, you're beautiful, you're whatever. And I feel like, for women more so, it's just, it's really, there's an attack on men. There isn't a specific cultural attack on men, but for the woman's standpoint, you know, that I feel like that's our attack. The difference between,
Yeah.
am I the modest, godly, honorable woman, or am I the woman that is outwardly beautiful, who gets the validation, who gets the attention, who gets all of these things? And in the fitness space, it's so hard. Even like my husband and I, we love going to the gym, even here in Korea, like we work out, everything. And it's just
Yeah.
so hard because, my husband, like, he used to be a godly man, and like someone's walking by half naked. And then I'm
Yeah,
just like, and then
and
I'm
that's where,
throwing
yeah,
up.
we get we're like, "Oh, shoot, is that" and we have to look like that, for you to gawk, and that's why I said earlier, have you can't surround yourself with that content, right? Like, you have to, like, put very inspiring women, especially us, in front of you, godly women who are working out, but modest or being classy, right? And then the girls at the gym, obviously, we can't control that, but the thing obviously, your husband's godly, and I'm sure he knows, and he is because my husband, even though he's not super, super godly, he knows respect, though, if you know that respect and you know that they know that it's not appropriate to obviously gawk at other women, they usually think of them like unfortunately, is what my husband will say. It's kind of seems like screaming for attention, right? And that's how my husband sees it. So I am blessed and thankful that he's not like, "Oh, wow, look at that half naked girl." He's kind of thinking like, "That's a little revealing and too much. Like, you're seeking too much." Because, if he's looking, probably 20 other men are looking, right? Or noticed. And
Never
so
mind the
we
never
have like,
mind the fact never mind the fact that it is already very difficult to find clothes to work out in, especially if you're lifting weights or doing anything that's comfortable. I don't want
yes.
something going up my butt. Like, I
No.
know you're
Uh,
uncomfortable. I know. You have
no.
to pick the wedgie out and adjust
Yep.
and do everything every time you get off the bench. Like, that's too
Nope.
much.
You won't catch me with shorts at the gym. I always try it, like those longer biker shorts. I'm like, "I can't do this. I am picking up my butt every
Yeah.
2 seconds. This is so inappropriate." Just no, I'm getting more attention looking at me doing this. Like, no. No, no,
No.
no. I just stick
So,
with leggings. It's a little bit and it's more modest to me. I feel more comfortable and,
yeah, it's
you
more
know.
comfortable, but it's okay. It's the
Yeah.
space that you're in is the space that I think God has you in for a reason,
Mhm.
and, I
Absolutely.
love looking at what you post on Instagram, and it's
Oh,
very,
thank you.
uh, very inspiring, and especially, it was recently that I saw your post about being previously Buddhist, and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's great. That's, like, perfect, let me message her." But
Oh, I'm so glad
thank
you did.
Thank you for everything that you're doing for women, for all Christians and all people who are interested in the faith that are coming across your platform. Maybe they are of a different faith, maybe they are of the Buddhist faith, and you're leading them to God. And so I pray that your ministry continues and that your ministry grows and that
Thank you.
your household is strengthened and that your marriage is strengthened and that God does wondrous things for you in your walk. So we're going to close out. I'm going to put Kathy's information in the link for this podcast so that you can follow her and see everything that she's doing in the name of Jesus for her page. Thank you, Kathy, so much. And I'm going to let you go and make sure you can get those babies and do what you need to do today.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So them up. The day's over. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
And God bless your podcast as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.